Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
Joshua Shrum. He is a very talented steward, very knowledgeable.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. This is one of those podcasts where I listen to every episode. I love what he's putting out there.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. Josh Shrum.
Parcels of Knowledge. Does a fantastic job with that podcast.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God. We need Article 8 scholars right now.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.
Good morning, and welcome back to Parcels of Knowledge, that podcast dedicated to delivering knowledge to the city letter carrier with your host,
the Roseville Wrecking Ball.
Today, we are doing an episode on Valentine's Day. That was my daughter. She said she wanted to be part of the episode, so she's pretty cool. Yeah, today we got a special episode. Today's Saturday with Shrum. I did it a little bit late because we went to Dairy Queen, me and my daughters, and we had a good time. But today it's about Anita Guzik. If I'm saying her name right, I hope I am. I think we had a good interview today. I think you guys will like it. And she is running for National AFL-CIO delegate under the CLC slate. Now, before we get to it, though, I do want to let everyone know we got a contest going on. We are doing a giveaway. Thanks to our Patreon supporters, the Wrecking Crew, we have the ability to give away 3 sets of 7 reference cards. These are bookmarks that have all kinds of important information any steward would need. Like, for example, tax codes, which article contains what, all kinds of stuff referenced on these laminated bookmarks. Then they're sold by Branch 828, which are not affiliated with us whatsoever. That's just where I'm purchasing it because they're a great branch who has great products. That's where everyone gets those calendars from. The way you get these reference cards, we're telling everyone if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, just search up Parcels of Knowledge. We're going to pick the winner out of those pool of subscribers on March 1st. So all you got to do, like our posts on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can win those sets of 7 reference cards. You don't have to be a steward. You could get it as a regular carrier if you want to be knowledgeable, or even better, if you got a steward, give them a surprise gift. Either way works. But yeah, without further ado, here we are with our episode for today. This is Saturday with Shrum with Anita, and I'll see you on the other side. All right. We're here with our guest. This is going to be Saturdays with Shrum. We've got another guest here, and we're going to do what we normally do every week. So would you please state your name and introduce yourself for the record?
My name is Anita Guzik. I'm from NALC, Branch 24, Los Angeles.
All right. And what do you currently do?
I am currently an officer and a field rep for Branch 24. I handle 13 stations. I handle also administrative work for the branch, including the food drive, the conventions, any unfair labor practices.
Nice.
What else? Yeah, and also the branch paper. So I keep busy.
That's good. We're going to start with the first question. We're just going to go down the line. I normally wouldn't put them in any order, but from now on, I think I like this. I put them in order of relatability to each other. So at this point, we are going to go from question to question. The first question here submitted was, what is the role of a National AFL-CIO delegate, which I imagine that's what you're running for. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
Okay, first the AFL-CIO stands for American Federation of Labor Industrial Congress of Industrial Organizations. The AFL-CIO delegates for the NALC represent the NALC at the convention. There's 9 delegates. 7 are elected by the delegates at the national convention. We're not in the mail-out ballot. We're elected at the national convention. The NALC president and secretary treasurer are automatic delegates by virtue of their position, per our Constitution. At the convention, at the AFL-CIO convention, we vote on issues just like we do at our national convention. We sit together, we discuss a vote. Our current AFL-CIO president is Liz Schuler, who, by the way, is the first female president of the AFL-CIO.
Oh, nice. Nice. All right, so moving on, how old were you when you got involved with the NALC?
I was 19, right after the strike.
Oh, wow. How many positions have you held with the NALC?
Quite a few. I started off in Michigan. As right after the strike, I ran for office. We had an election that year. I was vice president for 70 to 71. From 71 to 78, I was the recording secretary. From 78 to 84, I was the president of the branch until I transferred to Los Angeles. I also served as Michigan State Executive Board officer from 76 to 84. When I came to Los Angeles, they said, here's a warm, trained body, and I knew the officers there. They put me on the ticket for the first election after I got there. I served as California State Secretary from 1986 to 1990. From 86 to 89, I was a part-time Board of Audit officer in Branch 24, and from 1989 to 2022, I was a full-time recording secretary, and I took care of 18 stations. At that, it was part of that job, and the same administrative duties that I pretty much do right now. Also, from 2022 to 2024, I decided in our 22 election it was time for me to downsize, so I went to a part-time 3-day-a-week job as trustee, and that was for a little over a year, and sadly, our field rep passed away. So it was kind of like that little scene in The Godfather where you think you're just out of it and they drag you back in. That's what happened. I took over his job. So currently I'm still a trustee and I'm a full-time field rep. And I handle, like I said, the 13 stations. A lot of the administrative paperwork I still do. The stations I handle are Hollywood and that surrounding area that I'm currently doing now. It was a strike in 1970 that actually got me involved in the NALC.
Oh, nice. Well, Hollywood must be a nice area, right?
It is a nice area. It is a nice area.
Yeah,
that West LA is a pretty nice area, yes.
I spent 3 months over there, and I spent a lot of time visiting that in the observation place. I can't remember what that thing's called, but I worked for my last union. It's a nice area. Now, moving on to the next question. Are you currently on any NALC national committees?
Yes, I am. I am on the Disaster Relief Foundation Committee, which is like a corporation within the NALC, and we review and determine what to pay on grants submitted for people who suffer natural disasters like hurricanes and earthquakes and wildfires, that sort of thing. We meet once a month, and whatever grants are submitted, there are 5 voting members. I'm one of them, and we review the paperwork they submit, and we decide how much of a grant they get with the maximum of $5,000.
All right. Well, this question is assuming something I'm not sure is true or not, but it says, how long have you been an AFL-CIO delegate?
Since 1981.
Oh, so you are one currently.
Yes, I am. I'm currently a delegate. However, this year I will be running on the CLC ticket as in the same position.
Okay. Well, what was it like going on strike in 1970?
You know, I was only 19 years old when we went on strike. And I can remember a supervisor trying to hire it was so bad. The wages were very low. I remember a supervisor trying to hire a gas station pump guy who was making more money than we were. We were a department of the government at the time, and we had to rely on Congress for the crumbs they threw at us. And it was so legislation was a big issue because that's where we got our raises. And I do remember at one point the Congress voted themselves a 4% raise, and all we got was a 0.4%. That made everybody pretty mad. But at that time, I was only in the service about a year and a half. So to me, if I got fired, there would be a lot of other work out there. It was still in the Vietnam area, and there was a lot of work out there. But I was so impressed by watching the 25-year guys sweating it. You know, the guys that had 25 years in the service sweating it because we were, illegally striking. 100% of my branch, then Farmington, Michigan, branch 4570, went out on strike. And I can remember our president, Bill Rentz. He went to Detroit and he got a bunch of strike signs. And he told us all that if they came around with any cameras to put the sign over our face. So I don't even have a picture. So Nixon was the president at the time, and he eventually gave us amnesty. He pardoned us. And then we called it amnesty. So nobody really got brought up on charges or fired for it. I don't know if it worked that way nowadays, but back then it did. There were too many people that went out to fire us.
Well, I have a station, and this is not a question. I'm just coming up with this right now because I just thought about it. I have a station where, I'm from Roseville. I have a guy, Jim Nelson, told me a story. Let me see if, since I'm from Michigan, you're from Michigan, let me see if it's similar, what your experience. He told me that the day that they decided to strike, those guys on the workroom floor had decided to come to a vote and say, hey, okay, are we all going to strike or not, even though everyone else was already doing it? Is this something, because obviously National must not have been approving of it if the carriers themselves had to decide to strike. It was a wildcat strike, wasn't it?
Right.
So
right.
Was there something similar there? Did they come down to a vote?
Yeah, what happened in our particular branch, and I still remember this vividly, we were going to take a vote. And the president at the time, Bill Rentz, was our president. And one of my earliest mentors, by the way. He was our president, and we called the meeting, and every person was there. Every letter carrier was there. And we took a vote. I think there was only one vote against going on strike. He was one of our T6s. But it was overwhelming. It was unanimous.
That was funny, because the guy I talked to said there was only one guy that didn't want to vote for him, too. And it was a veteran that wanted to keep his pension or something like that.
Well, it was kind of the same with us. He was one of the older guys. And, you couldn't blame him at the time.
Yeah. All right, moving on. What is one specific lesson learned from the 1970 strike that you believe applies directly to our current contract negotiations or legislative battles?
That's an easy question. Unity. In unity, there is strength. We all stuck together, and we ended up getting our amnesty. We ended up changing the path of the Postal Service. So we're no longer a department of the government, and we had collective bargaining rights. When we had collective bargaining rights throughout the 70s, we were getting some really good raises at that time to catch us up with our private industry counterparts.
Okay.
And it was because of the strike. We didn't have to rely on Congress for a raise.
Now, how would you advocate for legislative priorities like the Social Security Fairness Act within the broader AFL-CIO platform?
Well, let me say, I would be in support of any legislation that's beneficial to letter carriers, just like we all should do. My position as AFL-CIO delegate doesn't give me any more influence than any of us have. You can contact any legislator by email. You can vote. You can influence your coworkers, your family, and your friends to do the same. We should all have that involvement.
All right. Okay, next question. In your view, what is the most pressing issue facing the American labor movement today, and how can the NALC contribute to the solution?
There's a lot of pressing issues out there now, as you know, Josh, but the most key issue is the American worker standard of living to me. The working family being able to buy a house, food on the table, raise and educate their children, and have a reasonable health care and have a secure retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something I think we can all support, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, how do you plan to represent the specific interests of letter carriers while also supporting the broader goals of 12 million workers in the AFL-CIO?
Well, Josh, you have to have a basic understanding that the AFL-CIO represents 64 national and international unions representing millions of workers. Our goals are pretty much the same as theirs, to improve our workers' standard of living.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not one to understand the role, and I don't know if these guys who submitted questions might not understand it completely either, because I think it's one of those things that not everyone talks about AFL-CIO delegates.
No.
It's one of those positions we kind of overlook sometimes.
Well, at the AFL-CIO conventions, you're mostly dealing with national officers that are there, and the national presidents get up and make their speeches, and most of the things we deal with are things that we can all agree on. I mean, there have been exceptions to that over the years, but mostly it's pro-worker issues that we can all agree on.
All right. Next question. If another union under the AFL-CIO umbrella, like the UAW or Teamsters, calls for a massive show of solidarity that requires NALC participation, how far are you willing to support them, giving our own no-strike restrictions?
Well, first let me clarify. There's no strike. The no strike applies to striking against the post office. We're not prohibited from walking a picket line and supporting another union that's on strike. We're not covered by that law if we do that. In fact, when the air traffic controllers went out, and this was in the early 80s, as you remember, I took my 4-year-old nephew, and he and I walked the picket line with him. And today, my nephew, Philip Landon, is an area vice president in Detroit AFGE Local 1658. In 1970, we went out when it was illegal to strike because our backs were against the wall, and we were united in that.
All right. How would you handle a situation, I'm not sure if this is even possible, but they said, how would you handle a situation where an AFL-CIO resolution might conflict with a specific NALC policy or goal?
I would go with the AFL. I would go with the NALC, of course, my own union.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you could change one single article in the national agreement tomorrow without management's input, what would it be and why?
Oh, Article 9. More money, higher wages, full COLA.
You know what? My mind didn't even go there. That's a really good point. I think without management's input, changing Article 9 would probably be a...
For the work our letter carriers do, they deserve a lot more money than we're currently making. In fact, let me just throw this out, because it's always been a thing with me. You know how we're out on the route and you see the UPS guy and they talk. I can remember when I carried this UPS guy on the route, and we used to argue on and off about who had the hardest job, the UPS or the letter carriers. And I used to point out to him that my easiest day in the post office was delivering parcel post. that we were walking up and down hundreds of sets of stairs with a pack on our back that they didn't do. And so we would go back and forth. And one day it was a really bad storm. It was sleeting. It was cold. The UPS guy pulled up and he yells out the window, "You win." Our
funny.
jobs are harder than theirs. We should be making at least what they make, probably more, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we're getting there with that last COLA.
No.
Yeah.
No, we have this prorated COLA that was wrong to begin with, and I think that's one of the things that need to be changed.
This next question says, the labor movement is seeing a massive surge in bottom-up organization. How can the NALC better leverage Table 2 carriers who are struggling with the current pay scale?
You know, in 1981, we were 1 inch away from going out on strike again, and it was over the issue of a 2-tier pay scale. And Sombrado recognized what a big mistake that would be. Management backed off of that 2-tier at the 11th hour. We have to go back to 1981 where we all stick together and we have to do away with the 2-tier wage system and the prorated COLA so that all letter carriers get a living wage and good benefits. We need higher pay and we need COLA. One of our CLC candidates, Bill Kreibel, is a Table 2 guy, in fact.
I'm one too. I know I'm not a candidate, but...
Oh, you know when you see a pay scale in a Table 1 and a Table 2, how unfair that is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Hopefully we could go back to that day.
Yes. Well, we did. I remember in 1981, I was still in Michigan. A funny story. I can remember, and at that time I was president of Branch 4570. And I can remember being in my garage and we were making picket signs. And a lot of the guys were talking about what they would do. They would put packs all over the parking lot. And one of the guys said to me, and he was a Vietnam veteran, he says, "You know, Anita, I know how to make bombs. Do you want me to?" I said, "No, we're not going to bomb anything." Okay. But at the 11th hour, the Postal Service did back off of that 2-tier wage system. That would never happen under Sombrado's regime.
Yeah, it looks like we need another Sombrado.
Yeah.
With the USPS Delivering for America plan fundamentally changing our office structures to S&DCs, will you use your position in AFL-CIO to help build a coalition that protects the physical presence of local post offices in our communities?
Well, you know, I would agree that there's changes that need to be made in our network to match the current mail makeup. We have more parcels and a lot less paper mail. But the way they implemented this system, it's significantly slowed down the mail. Locally, in Branch 24, we have 3. We have 2 different districts. One of the S&DCs are doing is in CA4, and the other 2 are in CA5. Now, in those 3 cases, they have the big parcel machines in them, and they just expanded the machines. No crews of letter carriers were moved in or out. Everything was new. They got new bathrooms, new floors, new ceilings, new fixtures, new cases. They set up the parking lot for the electric vehicles. So the carriers weren't really adversely affected in those cases. But one of our CLC candidates, David Groskoff, who's running for trustee, and he's the president of Branch 3, Buffalo, they were going to move the Buffalo plant to Rochester. And David led the movement to stop that from happening. That would have affected him greatly, his branch. He had led pickets. He did a lot of behind the scenes stuff to stop that from happening, and he was successful at doing it too. Personally, I think that part of the problem with this S&DC is of course the money issue and this slowing down the mail. I think that they should raise the rates just like any other business would. And bottom line, I would always do whatever is in my power to improve the lives of letter carriers.
Now, I got a question I was thinking while you were talking, and it's funny you bring up Grosskopf because I just formulated a question that was going to actually reference what you just said. So I just got a speculation in my head ever since I've seen the NALC's silence on this issue because, like you said, David Grosskopf, much like myself, disagreed with the consolidation of those offices into an SNDC, which I don't necessarily think that's in the best interest of letter carriers sometimes, not even considering the impact on the customers, because it kind of restarts your LMOUs and it kind of puts your autonomy out of whack. And there are benefits, like, for example, the fact that transportation gets added into your route, so ultimately you'll spend less time in the field exposed to the weather necessarily because you'll be driving instead. But why is the NALC so silent on it, do you think, in terms of the national level? Why don't they disagree with this process? And alternatively, my thought process on it is because it falls in line with their own goals, which is if everybody's under the same roof, let's say, different branches under the same roof, eventually the carriers are going to say, you know what, why don't we just merge? And I feel like the NALC has a vested interest in branches merging. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I see your point, but in all fairness, you almost have to go on a case by case because again, in every local isn't affected like that. Our local, like I said, they just extended the machines. They didn't move people around. They didn't.
Okay.
We're already a large merge branch. You're from a smaller branch, so I see how you would look at it that way. But you got to understand that sooner or later they do have to change the system to accommodate more parcels and less email. But less paper mail. But the way they did it, the way they implemented this system just made it worse.
Absolutely, yeah.
Slow down the mail.
All right, next question. Were you around when the USPS and NALC participated in employee involvement work teams, and if so, what is your thoughts? Also, what about your thoughts on the self-managed work teams?
Back in the 80s, and by this time I was the late 80s, I was a carrier and chief steward in Alhambra, California by then. And every week we had our EI meetings. One of my personal favorites was the option to combine lunch and breaks. And they went with the White Sox and a few other little things like that. So they were something we talked about, and the EI meetings and the people that were on it, and I thought it was a good thing overall. But EI was eliminated. We got that, what they call a Joe Mann letter. At the time, he was the deputy PMG in the Postal Service. I think he rose to that. At the time, he actually pulled out. He was the head of labor relations at headquarters. We got a letter from headquarters pulling out of EI, and they canceled all the EI agreements except for vertical flats, which we still have today. Now, about the self-managed work teams, we never got that far, but I can tell you right now, I didn't care for it because I felt that it looked good on paper, but in reality, I did not like the premise of coworkers supervising other coworkers. The job is tough enough without creating a divide and conquer situation between letter carriers.
Yeah, I feel like that would put a little dent in being able to file a grievance. Because
how are you going to file a grievance against your own co-worker, co-member?
Yeah, especially.
There were a lot of problems. Yeah, there were a lot of problems with that system that we never agreed to that in our area.
What is the most common misconceptions that carriers have about what happens at the National Convention?
Oh, I would say resolutions. Because some believe a resolution passed to attain a benefit or whatever for letter carriers is automatic when it's not. It first has to be negotiated into the contract with management. So it's not necessarily automatic, and some think it is.
Yeah, sometimes it can take 3 decades, I've noticed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we pass resolutions of the items that we want our union to put on the bargaining table. That doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically going to get it. Yeah, keep at it, yes.
Absolutely. What would you say to a steward who is having a hard time because their branch is creating roadblocks from allowing them to fully represent at their installations?
Well, that's an easy question to me. You run against them. You put your own ticket together, just like the CLC is doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any thoughts on the late former branch 3126 Royal Oak president Norm Brenberger?
Mm-hmm. You know, Norm was a good friend and an ally. He was very influential in convincing me after the strike, as a young girl, that Sombrado was the man that we should elect. So we were Sombrado supporters in Michigan when the rest of the state was supporting the administration. Vince ran against Rademacher in 72 and 74, and Rademacher was from Detroit. He ran against Joe Vaca in 76 and defeated him in 78. So it wasn't easy just swimming against the flow in Michigan, but we did. We supported the Sombrado administration when it wasn't popular to do so in Michigan. When I transferred to L.A., my branch 4570 was merged with branch 3126 around the same time Bremberger became president. When I planned to go to California, nobody really wanted to step up, so we made a decision to merge with branch 3126, and they're still with branch 3126. And 4570 had a few hundred people. There was 5 cities. Let's see if I can remember them: Farmington, Walled Lake, Novi, Brighton, and South Lyon. And they're now part of branch 3126.
At 3126, if you're listening out there, make sure you understand we're not going to merge with you. You're a great branch, though. We're a great branch. We've tried many times. It just doesn't work out. So,
you know, I know Michigan, California, having been the president of a small branch and now for decades a full-time officer in a large branch, I've had the opportunity to see both sides of the coin, Josh, and I see your feelings and I understand your feelings. Yeah. My personal belief is that it is much more powerful when you have a large branch with a lot of stations in it. We have almost 4,100 members in Los Angeles. And when I go into a station, the supervisor cannot tell me to go back to my case. And the officers that meet on Formal A, they hone their skills all day long on how to handle grievances, how to prevail in grievances, and what the rules are and how to find the rules. So, yeah, I do believe, having seen it both ways, that a larger branch, in most cases, does have an advantage.
Well, did you ever get the chance to meet Pat Carroll? What do you think about that guy, if you did?
Pat Carroll was a good guy, and he became business agent, and I think he did a good job.
Yeah, that was one of our. I'm from 4374. That's one of our guys.
Yeah, and I remember Nick Patatoni.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about him?
He was a good guy too. Yeah. I do remember after being in California that there was a proposed merger between, I think it was Pontiac and 3126. It didn't go down. It's just there's a difference in the way the members in some states look at it as opposed to California. California is mostly bigger branches.
Well, that's good, though. I mean, you guys do have a lot of members. But we'll move on. In fact, you know what? The next question's about California. Okay. And I think you might have answered this, but I'm going to ask it. Why do California branches often have outside Formal A representatives?
You know, Formal A representatives are the president or their designee. This issue is decided solely by the branch. The branch makes that determination. Now, you know, it's funny, I had to laugh at this one because my husband was president of Branch 1100 for 11 years, and their stewards handle their own Formal A's, and Branch 24 Los Angeles, the full-time officers do it. So it's always been like a little debate between us, the pros and cons of whether the stewards handle them or whether the branch handles them. But it's a decision that each branch makes on their own.
Oh wait, so 1100 does their, like, they got pretty much inside office.
Their shop stewards do their formal A's, and in Branch 24, our full-time officers do the formal A's.
You know, it's funny. I thought my branch was very unique for that because we used to, back in the day, I don't know if you remember this. It might have been. I'm not sure if you would have even heard of it because it wasn't that important. We did it because of the scholarship fund, from what I'm told. But we used to have a council, a South Macomb council, and they were separate branches, each installation. And eventually that council became what my branch is today. You know, they ended up merging eventually. And we kind of still operate like a council, even though we're one branch. Like the president kind of lets each station have a chief steward, and that chief steward basically, you know, they kind of do what they need to do as long as it's not prohibited by the branch president. You know, he plays kind of like you guys can take care of your own business for the most part as long as you're not doing anything wrong kind of role.
Well, it's generally the way it should go.
Yeah, it's pretty nice, but I don't see it everywhere though.
Well, you know, there's a lot of politics in every union, I suppose.
Now, can you explain to me why you are associated with the CLC and why you think we should vote for the CLC-affiliated candidates this upcoming election?
Well, let me say, James Henry is the head of our slate. I've known him for over 30 years, and James has a proven record of integrity and advocacy for our letter carriers. And, you know, James has the ability to attract courageous, like-minded candidates who are willing and unselfishly have put themselves on the line to represent letter carriers. For example, our Region 2 NBA candidate, Deborah Dixon, and our Region 15 NBA candidate, Orlando Gonzalez, were distinguished RAAs who were fired by Renfro right after they announced their candidacy. Both are now carrying mail with an even stronger resolve to fight for letter carriers. James is the candidate we need at this time, at this moment in time, to represent the NALC.
Now, which is better, the food in California or the food in Michigan?
Oh, see, I knew you guys would come up with a trick question. And I got a trick answer for you, okay?
All right.
A blending of California and Michigan foods is best, although I will say that California can't beat a Michigan pierogi.
Yeah, you know, I like to get atole over there in California. I thought that was pretty good.
Ah, okay.
What's your favorite postal podcast?
Oh, Corey Walton. I think the
Arbitration?
original is still the greatest, although you seem like a nice guy, too.
No, Corey's much on a different level than me, for sure.
Well, you know, Corey is our EVP candidate.
Yeah, he's the best out of the whole business. Yeah. I guarantee you that.
He is.
Now, what is your favorite thing to do in your free time?
I like to hang out with my husband. We like to rent large vacation rentals in different areas of the country, and we take our vacations with nieces and nephews who join us. Every year, we have a Thanksgiving reunion at the Troy. We go back to Michigan at the Troy, Michigan Embassy Suites, and they have a big presidential suite with 4 adjoining rooms, and we spend 2 full days with the family playing games, and I love having a good time with the kids. And I'm told that staycation they like better than any other vacation, that annual vacation that we do around Thanksgiving. We also do occasional cruises, and our next vacation is in June with family, where we have a large rental in the Smoky Mountains. Nice. Mm-hmm.
All right, so this went pretty quick. I like that. In fact, that kind of fits the theme of my podcast. We typically have 30-minute episodes, so this is perfect. Now, as with any other investigative interview, I do have to ask one final question. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
You know, I'm going to add something, but first I got to say, that is the question. I always tell shop stewards, tell them the answer is no. When management says that at the end of an investigative interview, tell them no, because our guys are so honest, they want to confess everything they did in that last question. That's where they mess up. But anyways, I would like to add personally that going towards the sunset of my career, I want to school as many of our next generation as possible. And for all those who've mentored me over the years, I want to pay it forward.
All right. And that's where you would end it, eh?
That's where I would end it.
Okay, cool. So it was good having you on. It was a pleasure.
Likewise, Josh.
And all right. Well, we'll see you next time. Hopefully, we can get another in before the actual elections. In fact,
that would be fun.
All right. So, what do you guys think? Do you think she is worthy of your support? Are you going to vote for her this upcoming election? What do you think about the things she said? Feel free to leave comments. Sorry about the sound quality. It wasn't on either one of our ends. I think it had to do with a connection issue because, we're calling between Michigan and California. It sounded like there was some connection issues. Sorry about the sound quality, but hopefully you learned something valuable today in terms of the interview and whether or not you'd like to vote for this candidate. Don't forget, we're doing this every Saturday. We're going to need more questions for next time. I'm going to announce who the next person is on Monday. And if there's no episode Monday, it'll be Wednesday. But either way, thank you for listening. And hopefully you learned something valuable today. Have a good day out there.
If these guys are getting educated, we will be in big trouble.
Management's been weighing you down like a bag of wet catalogs, but you don't gotta take it. You strap on the elbow of education, dig it?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God, we need Article 8 scholars right now. The Grievous Genius and the Roseville Wrecking Ball doing amazing work.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.